Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. I hope I'm not too late. Let's go, let's go, let's go, come on. No, he'll be there any minute. Gotta get there before he does. You! I'm actually really sorry about this! Gotcha. Sorry, buddy, but it was either you or me. Hey, I'm home early.
You knew.
No.
Well, now I guess I gotta do this.
I tried to stop
No,
it!
Josh! No!
But...
Now this is happening. The Land Before Time, Journey of the Brave. The 14th movie in the Land Before Time franchise. Why? Why here? Why now? Why as a Netflix and Walmart DVD exclusive? Well, there are a few explanations I can think of that I know the still-standing fans of The Land Before Time don't necessarily want to hear. When I learned that this movie was going to exist, I was positive that this was to also bank off the popularity of last year's release of Jurassic World. You know, since these are both dinosaur properties owned by NBC Universal. But people would try to then come to me saying, no, that's not it! The Land Before Time 14 was being produced as early 2014, well before the release of Jurassic World in theaters. Ah, very true, Land Before Time fans. But might I also direct you to the fact that Jurassic World had entered pre-production in 2013. It's not like Universal doesn't know what's going on within their own doors. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew that reviving yet another dinosaur franchise they owned, as they were getting the current population back into dinosaurs, could do nothing but profit for them. Only a theory? Yes, but you can't tell me that the idea for The Land Before Time 14 came about before Jurassic World, because it didn't. Otherwise, it would seem really random to necro this movie franchise that's been dead for the last 8 years. 8 years after the TV series ended, and perhaps 8 years since the last official web browser-based game was released. Like, for all intents and purposes, this should have all been over. But guess what? It's back! And I can only wish it was in POG form. Oh yeah, and before I continue, just in case it isn't painfully obvious, this review does in fact contain spoilers. I typically don't feel like I need to say that, but considering this movie just came out this week, I feel like I'd better make that plainly apparent. As I watched over this film immediately at its time of launch on Netflix, like the junkie I am, I realized a few things about it. Its animation is not necessarily terrible. It's fluid enough without much stutter or clipping to be noticed. No, really, that's kind of a compliment. It looks leaps and bounds better than the previous sequels. It's never going to look as nice as the original 1988 film, but it does an okay job. That's not to say that it's perfect. It's pretty painfully obvious just how much Universal Animation relied on computer-generated assistance. Obviously, everything has been colored via computer, but on top of that, there are a lot of jarringly obvious CG effects. This opening sequence here, for example, of a walking herd of dinosaurs is really plainly CG. Then there's tons of falling rocks that plainly don't look like the rest of the 2D animation. Or this moment in the movie where the dinosaurs have to push a tree over, and it's just this obvious CG rubbery substance that looks bad against the rest of its environment. And then there are times where there will be dusty, smoky, stinky effects coming off of characters and objects, and for some reason they're animated with much fewer frames than everything else around them and look much less fluid than anything else. These are animation flaws, and yet I still categorize it as looking better than most of the other sequel movies. It's nowhere near the intense camera dynamics of the first film, and all too often relies on one stagnant background, but the seams are just a little little bit better hidden than in the past. Here's another weird thing you're going to hear me say. It feels like Universal might have actually cared about continuity with this movie. By that I mean, I'm glad to see that they've come back, for starters, with a classic opening and closing narration. The narrator is a different voice than it's been in the past, but then most of the voice actors in this film are replacements by now.
Long, long ago, in the land before time, great beasts ruled the world.
The narrator goes on to quickly describe the events in The Land Before Time 10, where Littlefoot met his father Bronn for the first time, and explains Littlefoot's desire to stay in the Great Valley with his grandparents and friends rather than joining Bronn leading a migrating herd outside the Great Valley. You know what? Nice touch. No, really, it is! So the movie starts with Littlefoot being thrilled knowing his dad and his migrating herd should be stopping by the Great Valley today. And of course, as is standard with all the sequels, he breaks into song.
Hey, 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 today's the day. My dad's coming home from far away.
If I may do something else that's shocking here, I mean, I don't really like that there are songs in the Land Before Time movies now, but this one isn't exactly poorly composed. Like, it's a well enough structured song, it really is. It's, of course, simply completely juvenile.
Today? I forgot! Today's the day my dad comes back!
You forgot? You made a whole song about it just now. I'm surprised you could forget. Ah, another good thing. At least they left Spike alone and he doesn't talk in this movie. I mean, it's not like he talks in every movie. I'm just glad they made the decision to leave well enough alone. So in any case, Littlefoot goes to see his dad return with the herd, but he's not there. Instead, we get this amazing character, Wild Arms.
Oh, I'm safe. Am I really here? Someone to pinch me, please. No. Not you. No, not you. I'll pinch myself.
Wild Arms explains that Bronn actually had been brave enough to save the entire herd from an erupting volcano and earthquake, but then got separated from everybody in the process. If we take Bronn's story from The Land Before Time 10 into account, that marks the second time Bronn got separated from people and family thanks to an earthquake. Man, brave dude, but he has some seriously bad luck. As expected, after the previous 13 movies, Littlefoot begs everybody around him to help him go find his dad and bring him back, but everybody says the trip is just too dangerous. It's at this moment that Littlefoot's family and loved ones should have specifically kept a close, watchful eye over him because he kind of has a history of trying to save the entire Great Valley all by himself or with the help of his friends, but, you know, they don't, so off he goes on his own. Luckily for him, he has friends in Sarah, Spike, Ducky, and Petrie who are willing to come after him and help him. The parents and guardians of the kids don't even manage to notice that their kids are gone until it's nighttime, about halfway through the movie.
Of all the wild stunts these young ones have pulled, this is the worst.
Oh, so you do remember they've done this like 12 or so times before. Okay, but this is the worst one. Or, you know, you could just be a bad parent, it could be that. As the kids wander across dangerous territory headed in the direction of the volcano where they assume Littlefoot's dad is, I started coming to a shocking realization about this movie. I started seeing really familiar scenes. Littlefoot and Sarah argue about whether or not to follow a giant crack in the ground. The kids eventually have to run up a cliff and knock a couple of Sharptooth over an edge using rocks to help them. Littlefoot and Sarah eventually have a huge blow-up fight in the middle of a sandy area about who's right and who's wrong about directions, followed by Spike, Ducky, and Petrie choosing to follow Sarah and leaving Littlefoot to try to navigate by himself. Along with a number of other visual elements, one thing seems painfully clear to me. This is the Land Before Time Redux. As in, much like with what happened with Jurassic World, it seems obvious that the studio decided to take elements from the first, best, most successful film and just do them again. In some ways, that's a little lazy, but maybe in other ways that was the smartest thing they could have possibly done. I mean, at no point does this movie ever hit the true grit or the emotional intensity the first movie did. You don't ever go all the way to feeling the hurt or the heartbreak of Littlefoot as he's pushed to tears, losing his friends he wanted by his side, making a journey that he passionately knows he needs to make, which is why I almost consider this to be Land Before Time light mode. But the resemblance is quite obviously there. I mean, you're not ever going to get the kind of emotional response the first movie had when you have a horrible song like Hot and Stinky sung about smelling gross so that predators won't eat you.
Because we hot and stinky, stinky and hot. We'll walk right past them and we won't get caught.
But then, it's countered by the next song when Littlefoot separates from his friends, which is possibly the best song in the movie.
Who needs friends to slow you down? Wasting our time with too much talking.
Rather than feeling angry at its existence, I was realizing that I just wasn't thinking about anything as it was playing. And in the end, maybe that's the best thing I could have hoped for, just having songs that disappeared into the movie rather than sticking out like a sore thumb. But no, there's just no saving that hot and stinky thing.
If we be hot and stinky.
It's not long before a sandstorm blows through, and Littlefoot is forced into a cave while his friends are separated and covered in sand. Littlefoot comes across our movie's big-name cameo, Reba McEntire, voicing the character Etta. The character by no means is terrible, however I can't help but feel like the movie could have served the exact same purpose without her. She sort of just conveniently happens to be in the same cave as Littlefoot, and when the exit to the cave collapses, she ends up giving him advice on how to find the way out. You know, in song, because, well, they managed to rope in Reba McEntire, so why not?
Look for the light, one little spot, a little bit of hope to lead you out of the dark.
Not awful, mind you, but really not necessary. In the end, Littlefoot figures out all on his own that there's a river inside the cave that leads outside, so he hardly needed any of Etta's advice, or her bizarre non-sequiturs about any number of random sisters she seems to have.
She had a lot of sayings, my sister, like, don't use your tail to sniff the trail. Don't get me every time.
Meanwhile, up above ground after the sandstorm, there's another unnecessary part of the movie featuring Petrie becoming the leader of a group of tiny plant-eating dinosaurs completely by accident, and then rejoining Sarah, Ducky, and Spike and giving up his leadership. Well, that was short-lived and unneeded. But then the four of them, while wandering in circles trying to find Littlefoot, run into a different Sharptooth that makes noises like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. I mean, go figure, it's a universal property. Actually, while I'm at it, this movie features a ton of really cartoony sound effects. I mean, I want to say in some ways the film is good, but the wacky races kind of noises really brings the maturity level down. I get it, the franchise simply will never be as mature as it once was. Now, that doesn't mean I can't be a little disappointed by it. But luckily, all of this happens over the heads of Littlefoot and Etta, so they have an opportunity to save the four friends. Then there's a sappy apology.
I'm sorry, Littlefoot. Me too.
And now it's back on the trail to the volcano via theme park water slide. Even the dangerous waterfall isn't actually all that dangerous. A scene that could have been played for thrills was completely subverted. Whew, we almost had an exciting movie there. And finally, Littlefoot comes across his father near the volcano, stuck on a rock, just barely his size, with his foot trapped under a rock. After at least 2 days, if not longer, I'm shocked that Braun hasn't died from any number of other things, let alone being stuck near hot lava on a rock that conveniently fits only him. But just when all hope looks lost, Littlefoot delegates jobs to everybody, telling Sarah to knock over a rock to let loose a bunch of water onto the lava to solidify it, then have almost everybody else wedge the trunk of a tree under the rock, pinning Braun's leg, while Petrie watches to make sure they don't all get killed by lava. Regardless of whether or not the lava all instantly turned to rock upon touching water, I just get this feeling that the ground should still be superheated and fry off everybody's feet. But, what do I know? There was one other continuity issue that I've noticed throughout this franchise. There was no grass in the time of the dinosaurs. Who cares? Sure enough, the kids save an adult from literal the floor is lava, and just in time because Littlefoot's grandpa, Sarah's dad, and 2 other less important friends from previous films show up just to be like, "Oh, looks like you got this, huh? Cool, well, we can go home, I guess."
Let's all go home.
And, like, that's it. We don't get to see them return to the Great Valley, don't get to see them enjoy one another's company in comfort and safely away from earthquake cracks and volcanoes. The movie just ends. This is an opportunity to use the classic Land Before Time suite, or If We Hold On Together, either at the beginning or during the credits, which would have been perfect if they were really trying to recapture any of the magic of the first film. They came close sometimes, but it just didn't get all the way there. And just to make sure that you know it didn't get all the way there, the credits have to remind you of the worst song in the movie.
Hot and stinky. Hey, stop that. Hot and stinky.
And so the current final film in the Land Before Time franchise comes to an end. And with that, all I can say is, this was not the worst of all of the sequel movies. No, for real, and in fact, it might even be one of the best ones. Don't get me wrong, that absolutely does not make it good, no, but it feels like maybe there were 2 separate sets of ideals being wrestled with in the creation of this film. One is likely the very corporate idea that just wanted to shovel something out to appease children and the parents who don't want to freak their kids out. And the other was maybe the one guy in the boardroom meeting who fought with all of his might to not allow this movie to go into completely ridiculous, illogical non-continuity, who might have actually understood the 1988 roots of the franchise and wanted to make sure the older audience remembered it too. You know what? I really hope this franchise ends here. And not for my previous reasons I thought about the franchise 5 years ago, where I was just begging for somebody to put it out of its misery. No, this time I legitimately think that this was one of the best possible ways we can hope to have it end. I mean, I can think of a million really amazing things they could do if they actually cared about a full theatrical release and wanted to really pull on the heartstrings of both adults and children, but I know that Universal will never do it, so as far as direct-to-home video release is concerned, I hope that this is the end and that Universal doesn't just see this release as more dollar signs and an excuse to churn out more really bad titles. It's strange. After this release, I feel like I'm finally at peace with The Land Before Time and with myself, and I just legit don't feel so angry anymore. Maybe that's because, 5 years have passed since I did the previous Land Before Time reviews, and now I'm 30, and I'm just kind of sitting back and feeling like it's not worth it. But, even so, I guess in my own weird way, I really am glad that I stayed up until 2 a.m. Central Time on February 2nd, 2016, to see the initial release of The Land Before Time 14 on Netflix. And I feel like now I've been given a chance to say goodbye, and thank you.
Who needs friends to slow you down? Wasting our time with too much talking. Who needs friends to grumble and frown? When we should just keep walking.